Imagine stepping onto a plane today. You settle into your seat, right? You completely trust the marvel of modern engineering to carry you safely across the country. And today, of course, that trust is backed by decades of intense, rigorous security. But there was actually a time when that innocence was absolute and completely unprotected. Welcome to our explainer. Today we're diving into a single, fateful flight in 1933 that totally shattered the illusion of safety in the skies. It was this singular event that forced the world to wake up to a terrifying new reality, and it forever changed the course of history and the way we travel. This is the incredible and tragic story of United Flight 23.
Section 1. Early Commercial Aviation. The Golden Age of Flight.
So to really understand this, we have to go back to the 1930s. Flying back then was this incredibly romantic, thrilling adventure. Passengers would literally dress in their absolute finest clothes just to board an aircraft. Airlines were rapidly expanding their passenger routes all across the country, fiercely competing to have the fastest and most luxurious planes in the sky. But here's the critical catch. The industry was entirely focused on innovation and speed, way over strict safety checks. It completely lacked modern security protocols. There were zero metal detectors, no ID checks, no baggage scanners. You just bought a ticket and walked right out onto the tarmac. The industry was, for all intents and purposes, virtually unprotected from the kind of threat that was about to emerge.
Section 2. United Airlines Flight 23, the Manifest and Mission.
Now, at first glance, the details of this specific flight seem totally unremarkable. It's 1933, and United Airlines Flight 23 is just a routine commercial passenger route. On board, you have ordinary passengers and crew just going about their lives, completely unaware that their flight was about to become a very grim milestone in aviation history.
Section 3. Timeline to the explosion. A fateful journey.
The timeline here tells a really chilling story of sudden destruction. Flight 23 had a perfectly routine takeoff and ascent. Honestly, for the first portion of the trip, everything was completely standard. They're cruising midair on their planned route, functioning exactly as expected. And then, without any warning at all, radio contact was lost. Witnesses down on the ground actually reported hearing a massive, thunderous boom echoing from the clouds. In a fraction of a second, a sudden, catastrophic in-flight explosion ripped the aircraft apart in the sky, sending the wreckage plummeting to the earth below. Tragically, there were no survivors.
Section 4. The Sabotage Investigation. Uncovering the Truth.
Naturally, in the immediate aftermath, everyone assumed the tragedy was just a horrific accident, maybe a mechanical failure or a fuel line issue, right? But that perspective changed incredibly quickly, which brings us to a massive question that hung over the wreckage. Why did investigators conclude it was sabotage? Now, we have to remember, commercial airliners had crashed before this, but the debris field here started telling a story that just didn't align with a simple engine failure. The investigation rapidly shifted from a tragic accident recovery straight into a historical crime scene.
The investigators were actually super methodical in how they pieced this together to rule out an accident. First, by closely examining the scattered wreckage, they noticed something highly unusual. The specific way the aircraft was fragmented meant the plane had broken apart mid-air, not upon impact with the ground. Second, they identified distinct explosive residue on the debris, and it was pushed from the inside of the cabin outward. So, by meticulously ruling out any mechanical or engine failure, authorities were forced to take a definitive, unprecedented step. They officially classified the crash as a deliberate bombing.
I absolutely want to emphasize the profound historical weight of this finding. Flight 23 was officially the first proven air sabotage. This was the very first recorded instance in history where a commercial passenger aircraft was deliberately destroyed by a planted explosive device. It wasn't an unfortunate malfunction. It was a calculated, terrifying act of murder. And for the public and the aviation industry as a whole, this was a massive shock to the system. The skies were no longer this pure sanctuary of progress. They could actually be a target.
Section 5. Suspects and Unsolved Mystery. The Missing Perpetrator.
As you can imagine, once the reality of the bomb set in, a massive manhunt kicked off. But on one hand, you had all these numerous, wild theories involving targeted passengers, revenge plots, and various suspects. Literally everyone was a potential target, and investigators looked at every possible angle. But on the other hand, there was a complete lack of conclusive proof. You have to remember, forensics in 1933 were pretty rudimentary compared to today. There were no passenger manifests with ID verification, no security cameras at the airport, and absolutely no way to track exactly who might have slipped a package into the baggage hold. The theories were vast, sure, but the actionable forensic evidence tying anyone to the bomb was practically zero.
And that leads us to this incredibly chilling fact. The perpetrator was never identified. To this very day, the bombing of United Airlines Flight 23 remains a completely unsolved mystery. Whoever bypassed the non-existent security, planted a bomb on a commercial flight, and brought down that aircraft, they completely got away with it.
Section 6. The Legacy of Flight 23. Changing aviation forever.
It's a heavy burden that there was never any justice for the victims. But the story really doesn't end there. The monumental impact of Flight 23 just cannot be overstated. This single event totally exposed the severe vulnerabilities of early passenger flights. It proved, without a doubt, that aviation could no longer operate on a simple honor system. The tragedy forced the gradual creation of modern aviation security measures, pushing airlines and governments to finally start thinking about who and what was boarding their aircraft. It implemented strict changes to safety protocols, and perhaps just as importantly, it established the baseline for exactly how we investigate air disasters today.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Next time you're standing in an airport security line, taking off your shoes, or watching your bag roll through an X-ray scanner, ask yourself, how does the shadow of Flight 23 still protect you every time you board a plane today? Because every single protocol we rely on to keep us safe in the skies was born from the ashes of tragedies exactly like this one. Flight 23 was a devastating loss and, honestly, a perfect crime. But the hard lessons we learned from it are exactly what allow us to fly with confidence today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive gave you a completely new perspective on the history of aviation.